listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
G'day coaches, my online course Evolve Rugby is out. This course is based on the reoccurring lessons and themes that have come up in over 100 interviews of running this podcast. The online course contains video modules, worksheets and a reflective journal, and it's just what every coach needs for pre-season planning, mid-season review or post-season reflection. Check out Evolve Rugby via the link in the show notes and use the promo code TRCCP10 to get your 10% discount. Now, on with the show. Welcome to episode 114 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and joining me today are Kaila Colbin and Shane Fletcher. Kaila is the founder and CEO of Boma, an organization that supports leaders and change makers to be more intentional, intelligent, and courageous about the future. Shane Fletcher has been the team manager at Crusaders Rugby since 2017 and is also a World Rugby Level 4 coach. I connected with both of them recently on the Crusaders Coaching Leadership Program, and it's a pleasure to have them both on the show. So welcome, Kaila and Shane.
Good, Andy. Good to be here.
Andy.
How are we doing? How's sunny New Zealand? Is it sunny?
It is. It's gorgeous. We've actually had a bit of a second summer, Fletch?
It's been fantastic. We arrived back from Fiji and into almost far more comfortable 24 degrees. It was beautiful.
Nice. Did you, Fletch, did you see the beach or any surf in Fiji? It's been one of my dreams to go surfing in Fiji.
From the aircraft was about it. We were based at the hotel, and of course the focus is on keeping the energy in the legs. Yeah. So everybody was asked not to even go poolside for too long. So it wasn't a holiday, damn it.
No, fair enough. Cool. All right, let's get into it. This is actually the first time I've had two guests on the podcast at once, so pretty excited to use this format. And let's start with you, Kaila. What was a bit of your background growing up around sport and physical activity and those kind of things?
Yeah, look, I've always been someone who gets into things deep, does them for a while, and then I kind of find a new thing. So I was really into gymnastics for a while when I was a little kid. I got right into dance. I've had a dance studio a few blocks from my house. I grew up in New York City in Manhattan. So there was a dance studio a few blocks from my house that I'd go 3 hours a day and just do all the different dance classes. And then I got into, once I graduated uni, I did a little bit of horseback riding. I did some ice skating and then graduated uni. And then I got into martial arts, and I went hardcore into martial arts for years and years. I actually became a quite competitive boxer. I was ranked second in the US and in my division. So got really hardcore into that. And then I actually had a seizure. So the general consensus was that it was unrelated to boxing, but that repeated blows to the head, probably not a great idea going forward. Yeah. So I gave up on the boxing. But one thing I will say, given this is the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast, is that I've never been much for team sports. I played one season of lacrosse when I was at high school. I played one season. We had a perfect 0 season. We lost every single game. I was put onto the field once in the entire season. I got put on. They played me. I fouled in about 30 seconds and got taken straight off the field. That was my entire experience. So not much for the team sports, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, if you're stuck around in lacrosse, I've found lacrosse players turn into really, really good rugby players.
There you go.
Coaching in North America, a lot of lacrosse players will cross over. And it's kind of basketball with contact, and the spatial awareness and the vision and decision making is all in there. So had it been for another season of lacrosse, who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. And what about you, Fletch? You were born and bred in New Zealand, probably had a different upbringing in terms of sport and physical activity.
Yeah, a small town country kid,
Yeah.
and I think that's reasonably atypical of almost a generation back then. There were a lot more people living and working in the rural areas. So, I came from a family that passionate about rugby. My early memories were, jumping in the van in Kaikoura and doing an hour and a half on a Saturday morning, up in the frost and playing with your mates. And I think that was what sparked my love of actual team sports. A little bit different to Kaila because of the fact that I only really got into dancing when I got to the nightclubs at Teachers College, but it was a little bit different in that.
Yeah.
But it was I think the small town element to it meant that you participated in any sport with your group of friends, and so it was a real. You talk about the crossover of lacrosse into rugby, but it was the crossover everything into team. And that's what my best memories weren't necessarily of the sporting moments. It was of the social moments within sport. And my history has been playing anything and everything, reasonably highly competitive, and now it's certainly enjoying a bit of golf, but still enjoying the opportunities to get out and participate in rugby if I can, and cricket and touch and all of those fun things that can fill in an evening.
Yeah, and I think that can be sometimes lost with coaches, that the technical, tactical outside of that is often the most important. Like the kids won't actually say, "Oh, I learned this new pass," or "We learned a new move," or something like that. The big moments will be the friendships and the mateship and the adventures that they go on.
And again, I know we'll dig into this a little bit later, but the fascination of the role I've got now is still watching all of those authentic components of what I enjoyed as that little sort of 4-year-old, when you all buzzed around the ball and really probably ate your mouth guard while you were chewing the fat with your friend rather than being involved in the game. That's still really prevalent now and such an important component.
100%. Okay, back to Kaila. Your company's got a really exciting relationship now with Crusaders Rugby, and with some great initiatives. One I mentioned in the intro, the Coaching Leadership Program. Can you talk a little bit about what was the initial draw for you to partner with them, and how's that journey been for you so far?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a great question. I'm so excited. So I'll tell you the backstory. I always knew the Crusaders were a highly regarded brand, but to be totally honest, and at the risk of alienating your entire audience right now, I haven't followed rugby that closely. I didn't know that much about them as a team or as a franchise. And so the first thing that happened was we got the opportunity to partner with them for the Crusaders to participate, for some of the folks from not just the team, but the organization to participate in some of our executive leadership programs. And so that was the initiation of what would otherwise have been a pretty straightforward partnership like we might have had with any other organization. And then what happened was Alex Lemon, who I think is he GM commercial, Fletch? He's GM commercial at Crusaders. He came in and he sat down with me, and he gave me the generosity of walking me through the Crusaders backstory, which I didn't know. And I think even a lot of Crusaders fans don't really know this backstory. And I tell you what, I was riveted. The backstory of the Crusaders is the plot line of every feel-good sports movie you've ever seen, right? So Super Rugby starts 1996. The Crusaders are a disaster. Sorry, Fletch. Bottom of the table, lose every game except for 2. They're like, do we even come back next year? This is so bad. They're like, we got to change something up. They bring in a new coach, Wayne Smithy. All your listeners, I'm sure, will know Smithy. Smithy comes in, he says, we got to change things up, and we can't just focus on bigger, stronger, faster players. Every team has big, strong, fast players. We're going to focus on culture and specifically belonging. They go all in on belonging, hard out. They build systems, they build rituals, they build their language around it. They change their strapline to for each other. They build the fist pumps, everything that they do, focusing on that feeling that you and Fletch were just talking about a moment ago of like, how do I know this is the place for me? Year 2, they come in 6th. Year 3, they win their first championship, never look back. More championships than any other Super Rugby team by miles, more All Blacks, more All Black captains, more All Black coaches. And so he's telling me the story, and I was going, oh my God, this is an incredible story. And what I ultimately learned was that the work that the Crusaders do to be so successful is 100% consistent with all of the work that we do at Boma to support executives and senior leaders in terms of how to show up and lead their teams. And so we joined together to create this Crusaders Coaching Leadership Program, which started for rugby coaches. We've had 242 coaches from 24 countries through the program, including yourself, as of now. And, 100% would recommend, 100% said the experience would positively impact their coaching. 97% said they learned new skills and concepts. So it's really going super well. But now we're opening it up to beyond rugby coaches, because what we found is that these are principles that apply to anyone who has to lead teams to succeed and to thrive and drive at the highest level. These are the fundamental principles that need to apply. So I'll tell you what, it is such a delight and a joy for me to partner with Crusaders. And the thing that's so delightful and joyful about it is that I have no internal friction whatsoever, that everything we're bringing to the world is so consistent with everything I believe in and bring to the world through the rest of the work that Boma does. So yeah, I could talk about that for a long time because I feel very passionate about it.
Yeah, well, it sounds, well, you said it earlier, your values were aligned, and a lot of people listening might say, well, yeah, that would happen all the time. But I would hazard a guess that wouldn't happen all the time, that a lot of sporting teams and businesses, their values are not aligned, and it would be rarer to see a relationship like this than more common. Well,
it's interesting because I think I firmly believe everyone on earth is doing the best they can. I have a lot of love towards people generally. And my favorite definition of human is that we're all just imperfect meat sacks stumbling through life. And so, we stumble, we get it wrong, we do our best, right? So it's not uncommon for organizations to have values. That happens all the time. What is rare is for an organization to have operationalized it so thoroughly in the way that the Crusaders have, to be so committed to it and live into the values so strongly every single day, the way the Crusaders have. That's the real rarity.
Yeah. And just listening. Jump in,
Can I offer a little bit of comment on that, because of the fact that I love that narrative, and my take on it is we do all have values individually and collectively, and probably that narrative, that evolvement from year one, when it was all there, it was just the understanding of what was there. Smithy came in and actually he made the connections. He made, rather than focusing on the rugby, which wasn't going well, he focused on the people. And once he got the people connected and started to embed that true care, they understood what they were trying to achieve. So I think as a collective, we get lost in our groups, is the fact that we will start to tell them how to achieve, or we will start to basically visually show them how to achieve, but actually we don't empower them to achieve. So it's almost that looks like, sounds like, feels like. We all profess and have signs, and we've got a lot of words around, so you can see the visuals, and we all talk about care, or we talk about performance, or we talk about belonging. But unless you actually feel cared for, feel trusted, or feel respected, you'll never be at your best. Yeah. And I think that's, what I'm loving about the relationship with Kaila and her team is there's authenticity in that. So there's a real feeling. So you actually truly feel you want to contribute. And that's, I think, the secret ingredient that we have, but it's not secret.
Yeah.
But as you say, Kaila, it's what we do each and every day. And suddenly it's become our normal. And man, that's a great place to be, because of the fact that if you build on your normal, then you can achieve great things.
So I've got to say, Fletcher, you don't talk like many team managers. I think your title needs to be changed. It's clearly you've got a very broad-ranging role, and I think team manager would be a very, very, a small part of the role that you do. What can you give us a bit of a description of what your week looks like? What kind of your season look like, and how much of a cog in the machinery are you?
Yeah, again, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because you define what is a team manager, and sometimes we let that bias of title limit our understanding of contribution. And I would like to think that I'm just one of many that hopefully selflessly contribute. And it's we have. Each week is different, each day is different. But for us, what we really focus on is understanding that each moment is different. And I think where we tick away, and probably my role is the fact that I've got a real pastoral component to the role rather than a functional role of logistics. So as much as you define a program of wellbeing, if there's not that sort of sense of awareness and sense of care, then wellbeing, is limited. It's still there, but it's just in a deficient form. So I guess my role really is around, my history was in education, so being a school principal, and it's a very similar role to that, in the fact that you've got to look back, not be at the forefront, because if you get at the forefront, it becomes about you. So it's about just standing back and making sure everybody's okay, and that's right from your youngest learner, which is, our at the moment we've got replacement players who come in, and yesterday we had a player came in, first time in our environment, evolving in his position, and man, he walks into this group of 45 players who there's the splashing of All Blacks, and you've got Sammy Whitelock there who's played 143 tests, 176 games for us, and this young man sits in the room. So I guess a responsibility that I've got, but it's a collaborative and collective responsibility, is to ensure that when he comes in, he feels empowered to be his best, as we said. So how you do that, there's no specific forum that we pass through. It's more about the fact that actually understand this person as an individual, because they need to feel received into the environment to be their best. So it's setting up elements like that around our people, around our program and our function, and then that varies, as I say, across the time frame. So I'm work away really around all of the travel, the food, the well-being, the overseeing the sort of connection with people outside the group, and all the different elements of connection that we have. The people at the airport, there's somebody at Melbourne Airport last year, we had a flight cancelled in Canberra and it was a bit of a disaster, but when I rang the Air New Zealand person at Melbourne, she said, "Oh, I remember you. You're that. Oh, you guys are so good to work with.
That's important.
Let's work at a solution." And all of a sudden, Air New Zealand puts on a big plane from Sydney the next day, a bigger plane to cater for us, and it's only because we use it. We say please and thank you. So again, as I say, it sounds a little bit bizarre and surreal, but if I was to write my job description, you'd see a lot of words, but it wouldn't describe the true function. But that also works with a huge amount of our heartbeat, our backroom staff, the people that if I said list our management, you'd list some people first and foremost, because they're at the forefront, but really around contribution, if you were to go further down into the blurry words of names, the people you don't know and don't really see, they're possibly the ones that contribute the most.
Yeah, I had a guest on the pod recently, and he doesn't use the word player-centered. He uses the words people-centered, because it's not just the players, it's not just the coaches, but it's everyone in that group, in that community. So yeah. That's
and as you know,
point.
Andy, one of the modules in the Crusaders Coaching Leadership Program is person first, player second.
Yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, 100%. We're all just people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's jump into that. Kaila, for coaches listening, can you give a bit of insight into the Crusaders Coaching Leadership Program? How is it created? How is it decided what material was to be covered, and how can coaches engage in it?
Yeah, for sure. So effectively, the way this program came about is that pre-COVID, Crusaders had the Crusaders International Academy, and coaches from around the world used to come to Christchurch and spend 2 weeks with the team at Rugby Park and be able to learn from them. Obviously, their history is so well known that people wanted to learn how is it possible that you do what you do so consistently over time. And so then COVID hit, and obviously they couldn't keep running it once the borders were closed. And so they decided to run it online. So they ran it on Zoom a few times. I think 3 times they ran it on Zoom. And it was 2 weeks, and it was 3 hours every single day. And people loved it, of course, because you get the opportunity to interact with Crusaders. And, it's really hard to scale. It's logistically challenging. They have to organize not only for the participants, you have to be awake at that time and online at that time, but also on the Crusaders side, you got to organize everybody and make sure everybody's lined up to do it at the right time. And so when we had the opportunity to partner with them, we said, what could we do that could create this same immersive experience, the same sense of belonging, the same feel of connecting to the Crusaders, to the legends, but that also is a little more scalable and allows us to reach further and make it more accessible for more people. And so what we ended up doing was we worked with an award-winning filmmaker, Slavko Martinov, and his business partner, Mike Kelland, to capture 4 of really just the Crusaders legends. And there's so many legends that have come out of the Crusaders, but Samuel Whitelock, Robbie Dean, Scott Robertson, and Kieran Reed. And we captured them in a way that even if we were trying to do a live Zoom thing, we wouldn't be able to capture them, right? So because we worked with these people who were so skilled at what they were doing, so we got this beautiful video content. But the thing is, we've all experienced these online courses that are just videos and you just do them on your own, and you sort of do the first video and then you wander away to check the pantry and, you don't go back to it. And so really the thing that we did with the program that makes it so special is we focused on the thing that the Crusaders focus on, which is the community, the people who are on the program. How do we create a sense of community amongst the people who are participating? How do we connect them with each other? And so the way it works is we've got these modules and we drop the modules at specific times, and you can watch the module whenever you want. But the real value of the program is when you're talking to everyone else who's on the program in Slack. And so, the way that I describe it is, imagine if you're like a massive like Mandalorian fan and you're connected to an online group of super Mandalorian fans around the world. You can watch the latest episode whenever you wake up in Sydney or in New Zealand or in Zimbabwe. It doesn't really matter, but you want to watch it as soon as you can because that's when all your people are talking about it online. It's the same with the Crusaders Coaching Leadership Program. We drop the modules at specific times. It's asynchronous. You can consume it whenever you want, but it's time sensitive because that's when all your fellow participants are talking about it. And what we found, like I said, is just the results have really been extraordinary. And, I'll just tell you one story from the first program that we ran. It's a 2-week program. The first program that we ran, there was a guy on the program who about a week and a half in, he said, I just have to share. He wrote this on Slack. He was like, I just have to share something that just happened. I had a player on my team who at the end of last season, he kind of dropped off. Wasn't coming to any of the postseason activities, wasn't engaged, wasn't answering any of the emails or whatever. He says, because of this program, I was inspired to reach out to him to find out what was going on, came to learn that the kid had gotten done for drink driving. I say kid, he's coaching 18 to 20-year-olds. Kid had gotten done for drink driving. Obviously ashamed, let the team down, didn't live up to the team values, right? And so he just kind of withdrew. He says, because of what I learned on this program, I was able to encourage this kid to come back and share what had happened with the rest of the team. He says, not only is this kid now fully back on board and more engaged than ever for next season, but the team now has a new culture of honesty and vulnerability that they absolutely did not have before. And I'm telling you, I was reading this, I'm sobbing reading it because I'm thinking of this kid and I'm going, this is a fork in the road moment for this kid. He was on a path that is, the path he was on is he never goes back. He just never goes, he quits rugby and people say, why don't you play rugby anymore? And he makes up a story and his story is, I don't play because I didn't like the coach or, I was too good for them and they didn't appreciate how awesome I was or whatever. But what actually happened was he stumbled, as we all do, imperfect meat sack stumbling through life. He screwed up. He got held accountable for it. He got seen for who he is as this imperfect human, welcomed back into the fold. And now he's got this whole pathway with rugby ahead of him. And that's why we get out of bed every morning. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah, that's cool. And it leads me a bit to my next question, actually, for Fletch. And the other day, I follow a Twitter handle called The Daily Stoic. It's a guy called Ryan Holiday. He's an awesome author, and he's kind of modernized Stoicism and Stoic philosophy. And he puts out a quote every day on Twitter. And one he put out was, the best things in life are byproducts of doing the right things. And when I read that, I'm like, I'm in the middle of prepping for this interview, and it made me think of the Crusaders, and it made me think of, especially what are the right things in your, what you're seeing, Fletch. And, I think a lot of these right things don't cost any money, so every coach can implement them in their environment. So what would you say to that, Fletch, in terms of the right things in inverted commas?
That's fascinating, isn't it? And the first thing I'd concentrate on is the right things. And, our right things aren't necessarily everybody's right things. Yeah. And we don't always do the right thing. That needs to be the other thing that we put out there. You know, often we've got some true aspiration and building towards those goals. We may get it subtly wrong, but one of the things I talked about moments there before. One of the things that we really work hard on is understanding our moments and understanding that if you don't win a moment, that's okay, but try really hard not to lose consecutive moments. And sometimes that's emotion and, you know, our terminology, body language, all of those things that we do in our teams, where as much as we might supposedly say it, but our body language actually says something quite different. Then there's that sort of murk and mess, which tends to impact on more of the group than we understand as whatever role we have. But actually, when you just said it, it suddenly made me think how often we focus on outcomes. And I think that's a big thing that we do with our teams and coaching roles. We get really hung up on the outcome, but we forget about educating the process. And we feel that because we don't achieve an outcome in anything, and this can be anything in life, you know, we try and convince ourselves that the complete process is wrong. But I think the magical people who are able to enhance performance, whether you're a leader, whether you're the boss, whether you're the coach, whether you're the participant, whether you're the newest player in, but if you can understand your process and what builds towards achieving the outcome, then when you've got the ability to break down that process and basically enhance the micro components of it, then you've got that true ability to empower and make people grow, or make groups grow. And that can be down to the art of conversation, or it can be down to, you know, suddenly a pass is going high when I'm passing right to left, but it's purely where I'm finishing my hands. So rather than try and do repetition of being average and expecting to be great by not enhancing the process, we actually break down that micro and we'll just coach the micro. And again, you know, that the best things in life are the byproducts of doing the right things. It's probably the best things in life are because we understand it in micro form. And you know, it's as I say, in any realm that we have with groups or even with ourselves, understand what you want to achieve, but then really define and understand how you're going to achieve it. I made a couple of just wee thoughts there around the difference between aspiration and inspiration, you know, and the fact that often we'll provide an outcome almost like an inspirational component, because of the fact that we'll make something glossy and we'll tell everybody how glossy it is, and you'll try to inspire them to achieve the outcome. But actually, if you define the process, you'll get that aspiration. People will understand it. They'll feel empowered. They'll feel that ability to achieve. And quite often they'll succeed above the outcome. And I think that's what we see every day at the Crusaders, is the fact that we've got a group that arrives, well, they don't necessarily arrive. They want to be their best from the moment they wake up. And yeah, I will divert to that quickly. The mā pango mā whiro, pango being the colour of almost the limitless capacity of potential, and then the red being the leadership. And we talk about the fact that every day with our eyes closed when we're asleep, we're in the black, so we've got this infinite potential to achieve. So when we're opening our eyes, we're suddenly in this world of infinite potential. So what are we going to do? And if we've got this ability to aspire and inspire, then, you know, what can you achieve? How exciting is that? So every day, as I say, it's a little bit fluffy, but you know, Joe Moody wouldn't like me to be talking this fluffy, but you know, it's basically how we operate, and it's a true ingredient in our understanding towards success.
Yeah, well, when you were talking about that, when you were talking about outcomes and processes, I was thinking about the game you guys just had on the weekend, and when you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. Like for me as a player and as a coach, I'm one of those ones that has a hard time with losing, and you know, often it can send you into a bit of a mist, into a bit of darkness. What are those processes that you take place as a group when the Crusaders, which they don't lose very often, but when they don't get the outcome, what are maybe some processes that coaches could learn from you guys?
Well, that's a great question, actually, because of the fact that sometimes we get really hung up on consequence. And so therefore the win-loss is the consequence that we often get focused on. But then suddenly we start to coach the consequence, and then it's drop pass versus caught pass. It's missed tackle versus made tackle. And all of a sudden we get hung up on these statistics, and we're coaching consequence. And people become really concerned about consequence. So what do? You back off. You actually start to withdraw. You don't perform. You play safe. Whereas for us, we know we're in a competition that if we're not on, all of these other teams are more than capable, and we have immense respect for all of the teams. It was a great example. We talked about the fact that we knew the Drua were going to be a team that we would have to try and be in front at the 80th minute to be successful. And if it took until the 80th to get in front, we were okay with that. And of course, when Ferg knocked over those 2 points and suddenly we were 2 points in front, and I made the call through 1 minute, 1 minute remaining. So we were 79 minutes, we'd actually just about succeeded. But then we just didn't get a couple of other moments right. Suddenly it became about the score and we lost. But then if you reflected, as a true coach would, on the fact that we looked at all of our orientation from preparation, pre-departure, to arrive over in Fiji, to put ourselves in a position to win the game, and we were. So therefore, we weren't that brutal on ourselves. We just had to look at parts of our game that we didn't get right. And, our playing group and our coaching staff are so experienced that, they've taken components of the game that we didn't achieve very well. And a lot of that was, our kicking rewards, our kicking outcomes weren't there. So again, you unpack back to the source of kick, the type of kick, the roles within kick. So again, it gets quite micro, but it's an easy thing for us just to look through because of the fact that it's small parts. It's not kind of global parts that we look to address. So,
hi, coaches. In January, I had the opportunity to go on the Crusaders Coaching Leadership Program, and let me tell you, it was awesome. The videos from Robbie Deans, Razor Robertson, Kieran Reid, and Sam Whitelock were like binging your favorite Netflix show. And the other coaches were amazing as well. There are 127 of us from 15 different countries. And the best part is, it's all online, so you can work it around your busy schedule. Highly recommend this course if you get the chance. Check it out at crusaderscoaching.com. Now back to the show. All right, Kaila, back to you. During the coaching leadership program, you hosted a number of one-on-one chats with people like Razor and Robbie Deans. Kind of watching them, I was like, this is essentially what I do in the podcast. So I was enjoying being an audience member as opposed to a host. So every podcast I do, I get something out of it, no matter who the coach is or whether they're high profile or not. But you had a couple of high profile leaders there. What were some of the big leadership takeaways that you got from those experiences?
Oh, look, every time I get to talk to any of them, really any of the four, Razor, Robbie, Kieran, Samuel, I take away so much. And it always makes me laugh a little bit because, they're talking about rugby, but I always feel like they're talking straight to me and like my own leadership. So like, I'll give you an example. It's not the one you asked about, but Samuel, there's a point in one of the videos where he talks about the hardest thing as a captain is learning when to be quiet. And I always feel like he's talking
That's
directly
why I was
to
never
me
captain.
because I've talked so much. And so, just these things that are like, that's absolutely true in my leadership and my business, right? I have to be really mindful of when I create the space for other people to step up. Robbie talks about the fact that a bad idea committed to is better than a good idea not committed
I love
to.
that one.
That one is, oh my gosh, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And this thing of like, okay, well, we have to take action, because if we don't take action, that's a decision. That's a decision that lets us down. I feel, when I talk to Robbie and Razor, one of the things, and on those Ask Me Anything sessions that we run in the program, one of the things that is so great about them is how generous they both are. right? They're both so generous. And Razor talks about his influences, and he's so relentlessly curious about himself and about others and about what he can learn and how he can grow and improve. He is so all in. He's so all in, like it's just beautiful. And same like Robbie, Robbie participates in this program because he cares so deeply about not spreading the words. It sounds so, biblical. That's not what I'm trying to say, but he cares so deeply about elevating the game for everyone. And one of the questions we get a lot is, why would the Crusaders be willing to share this information, right? Isn't this their kind of secret sauce? And the Colin and Razor and them talk about how Wayne Smithy used to say.
Yeah, I was just about to say Wayne Smith.
Smithy used to say, look, if you're performing at this level, you want to bring everybody up to the level that you're at, so that it forces you to keep learning and growing, right? Yeah. And if your hope is I get to stay at my level and hope everyone else is gonna stay lesser than I am, then they're gonna surpass you and you're gonna end up losing. So it forces them to learn and grow. But the other thing is that, if we love the game, then having a world where rugby coaches understand how to connect with their players as people and how to bring out the best in them, that's going to make the game better for everybody. That's going to uplift the whole sport and globally. And that's really what we're after. And so I see that generosity coming from Robbie, coming from Razor when we do those Ask Me Anythings. And, you submitted questions for them, and anyone can submit questions, and they'll just answer. They just take them on the fly. They've got a tough ask because they've got, hundreds of people asking their questions all at once. And they just, they're so open in how they share. It's really special.
That's a good message for coaches there too. Like I've found I'm always blown away by the generosity of coaches to come onto my podcast. I had Wayne Smith on for my 100th episode, and I know he's probably not someone who wants awards or anything, but if that guy doesn't get into the World Rugby Coaching Hall of Fame pretty soon, I don't know what's going on. But he was magnificent, and every coach, like I said, I get something from them, and all you have to do is ask. And we've got so many opportunities to do that, whether it be LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. So there really is no excuse anymore as a coach to say, I'm kind of stuck. I can't develop. No one's offering courses. No one's, running anything in my local town. The opportunities are there, and the evidence is pretty clear that coaches love talking about what they do, and they're not afraid to share.
Yeah, and we see this on the program as well, like the sharing amongst coach participants is just extraordinary. People will share their playbooks, they share their tactics, they share their techniques, their rituals, like everything. And it's just, we all learn from each other. And one of our core principles with the program is that the purpose of it is not to copy paste the Crusaders way onto other teams. The purpose of it is to share the Crusaders way of thinking and approaching it, so that you can create your own way of showing up with your teams, right? So having all of those influences and all of that input from the other participants just feeds into the creative process for every coach to be able to adapt it to their own team.
Yeah, awesome. All right, back to Fletch. The Crusaders coaches and managers, you talked extensively about this actually on Slack mainly, was the use of VARC learning styles model. Especially at the senior level. I don't think it happens at the academy level, but definitely at the senior level. I'm a teacher, so when I saw VARC, I was very curious about how it was implemented, because I know it does come with some critique as well as in terms of its efficacy. Can you discuss a little bit about, well, firstly, what is VARC and how is it implemented, as well as maybe some cautions to coaches looking to use a model like this?
Yeah, interesting one. It's not so much VARC. I know that on our Slack that VARC was referred to, and of course VARC is a learning style, as we all know, the visual, audible, the reader writer, and the kinesthetic. So actually understanding modes of learning. But probably the reference that we were making is around communication styles, and we use the dotting.
Look at this. Element. This is why I run the pod. I missed it in the course, and now I'm getting.
And we're learning off each other as we do. So And really it's around a communication style. And of course, there's so many elements. Those in education or in business would have potentially gone to the Herman Brain Dominance Index as a brain quadrant dominance, and the dots are similar. And there's, a woman, Alison Mooney, talks about 4 personality Ps, the playful, the powerful, the precise, etc., etc. So with us, it was the dots, and I believe that this made a massive difference to Razor in particular, because, as Kaila said, he's got this energy to him. He's got this kind of randomness that when he comes into the room, it's like a tornado. There's huge energy. You get sucked in towards the middle of it, but also on the outside, there's quite a bit of damage. So, and I'm meaning that in the nicest possible way. Good. But that's what the tornado personality or the purple dot does. They're huge ideas people. They are constantly referencing towards ideas, and because they get so excited about an idea, they suddenly get a new idea. But the challenge is for a purple dot is they're 75% completers. So they're someone that will start something and then get lost. And then while they're off on this journey, they forget what's behind them type thing. So we've got what we call purple dots who are that type of person. We've got a red dot, and a red dot is a logical, if it makes sense, why waste time fluffing around trying to get more sense to it? Let's just get on and do it. And of course, Sam Whitelock and a lot of our sort of rural based people, I guess, or orientated people are probably a little bit more red dot. They don't want to waste time, because to achieve, we can just get on and do it because it makes sense. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a mo. But a yellow dot is a precise person, and we've got lots of precise people. If you look, those that, if you could see Kaila's books on her bookshelf, are beautifully ordered. The lines are straight. There's great balance to it. They're precise people. They're people that enjoy detail, and for them, they seek detail. So they enjoy a list. They enjoy when they're leading. They'll provide a lot of detail, which is great. And then the blue dots are the really caring people, the people that listen for language. They're the people that walk into the room and they seek the emotive quotient of it. They want to feel love. They feel authentic care. They're the ones that when they're not quite right, just a hand on the shoulder, that physical touch is just something that just empowers them again. So we've all got splashings of these communication styles. But what was our early days was, before we looked at it, we had this perception that everybody was like us. So we talk a lot about the me, we. You'd have seen that come across, and it was that understanding of me before we can truly understand we. Whereas what we were tending to do was believing that we was the same as me. So, I'll take Razor as that example, in the fact that he felt that everybody saw the world like him and operated. So it was okay just to kind of be that whirlwind and carry on through without looking back. And what we explored, a man, Alan Bunting, who was based up in the Waikato, came down and just pretty much took a session with us. And he said, what I want you to do is, when I talk about this, if you think it's you, put down 1 tick. If you really think it's you, put down 2 ticks. And I'm going to now talk about yellow dots. So if you might have ended up with 60 ticks and as a yellow, and then he went through the red, and you might end up with 20 ticks in red, and whatever. But suddenly you had this orientation of how your communication style, the bias it may be, and the understanding. So what it did was, rather than say this is truly what you are, it really meant that we actually had to look at how we communicate. And when Ray realized that actually he had some outstanding ideas and energy, but he needed someone else to give it some structure, and he needed other elements. He needed to take time to connect with the Pacific Island boys, so a lot of them are the blue dots, who need that little bit of love, that care, that time, attention to emotion. And suddenly we got this ability to understand right across our group that we've got this beautiful rainbow of connection. And it's something that in the last sort of 6 years that I've been involved is everybody that comes in, we don't label them with anything, but what we do is we take true time to understand who they are to their core. So it means that when they're in, they, again, we talk about that authentic care. They truly feel connected to the environment because the environment's taken time to truly connect.
Yeah.
So it's something that the VARC learning style for us, I'll refer back to that, alongside our ability to communicate, the VARC needs to be splashed across because of the fact that we've probably got more kinesthetic learners. And if you're a yellow dot and you're not a kinesthetic learner, but you're a visual, you'll put up lists, pictures, everything like that. Whereas the kinesthetic learner, that doesn't make sense to them. They want to get out and go through the process. They need to take action before they cement the learning. So you can still have your detail in your kinesthetic learning. So it's trying to get that balance of all of the communication styles and the kinesthetic, and the VARC components, so your educational styles.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, the art of education. You know, that's something
100%.
we do with our families. That's something we do with our businesses. That happens at schools every day. You know, we're in an educational environment where rugby's our curriculum. So, you know, it's a fascinating blend, but if we truly believe that we stand out the front and coach by dominating, then suddenly we're the coach, we're not their leader. We're being a leader, we're not showing leadership. All of those sort of things that are quite different.
Yeah, and I can imagine for a young man to find out something, this would be like putting some pieces together and some real clarity and understanding on, oh, this is why I do that. And I think that would be hugely helpful in terms of personal growth. I know if I knew about it when in my early 20s, you know, you'd be able to tap into a few things and get help in others.
Couple of great examples. One of our halfbacks was a yellow dot, and for 3 weeks he was being told just bluntly by a red dot, the red character type, that he was playing poorly, and that the red dot thought that was telling the yellow dot everything they needed to know. And in the 3rd week, we talked about the fact that, hold on, this guy here needs detail. So the coaches then went, oh, okay, and they gave this person 5 pieces of detail that they needed to do to improve their game. 2 weeks later, he was the form halfback.
Awesome.
And you think, well, whose issue was that in performance? Was it the learner, or was it the educator? And once we got that balance right, suddenly we had high performance.
Yeah.
So again, it's, you know, Sam Whitelock is the most incredible human for a start. But it's because of, you know, in his mind, let's just get on. But when he is ready to go, right, let's go, he'll turn around and scope the room for, if he knows that there's a blue dot there, he'll actually go in and check, mate, are you okay? Put his hand on his shoulder. For red dots, they don't like physical touch. But for Sam, he reaches out, touches the shoulder, because he knows that that's what is needed to empower that person.
Yeah.
And
awesome. Man
alive, when you watch, you know, as I'm allowed to do from my sort of my satellite position, when you watch people orientating in our group like that, you just go, wow, that is what has made us special, or is a key component of what makes us special. We talked about magic fairy dust there before, coming as small particles. Wow, that's a small particle of a massive function.
Awesome. All right, I'll give the last question to Kaila before we wrap it up with my usual final 4 questions. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that this will be Kaila's favorite question. During the course, you mentioned on the Slack a variety of books and resources around leadership, and some non-leadership ones as well. What would be your top 3 books on leadership that you'd recommend to coaches, and why?
Can I? I love books so much.
Might have to be a separate episode.
Yeah, for sure. If your listeners could see, you'd be able to see what Fletcher and Andy can see, which is my giant bookshelves behind me. So I'm gonna recommend books that are a little bit left field here.
Love it.
So totally unrelated to coaching, but books that have been really foundational for me, for my worldview, and for kind of how I approach things. So the first one is a book called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's a book that these are basically books about how we understand ourselves, each other, and the world better. And, to Fletcher's point about dotting, the thing that makes dotting so successful for the Crusaders is that it helps the folks there understand themselves and each other and the world better. And then when we understand ourselves and each other and the world better, we can perform better. So the 4 Agreements for me, a huge book about understanding myself and how I can show up in the most powerful possible way. Another book that I would recommend, a lot of my work is working with Dr. Brene Brown and her Dare to Lead curriculum. And so that book, Dare to Lead, is just a spectacular one for any leader and in any context. So and the way that Brene defines leaders is, sorry if you can hear the dog barking, that's okay. The way that Brene defines leaders is anyone who sees the potential in people and processes and has the courage to work to bring about that potential.
Cool.
Right. So Dare to Lead, highly recommend that one. And the final one I'm going to recommend is it's a really random one, but it is a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. B-A-C-H. Richard Bach he's the one who wrote, if you've heard of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, that he wrote that book. And Illusions, it has nothing to do with rugby coaching whatsoever, but it is just such a delight of a book and such a personal growth journey of a book. And there's so much in it. And I would recommend it to anyone and everyone.
Awesome. Great stuff. All right. Well, we always end the podcast with the same final 4 questions. I'll start with Kaila first on this one. When you were a kid growing up in New York City, who was one of the idols that you had in sports, physical activity that you looked up to and made you intrigued about what they did?
Yeah, I got to say my favorite athlete of all time, Muhammad Ali, for sure.
Yeah, nice.
And, not only because obviously, physically performance, just extraordinary, next level, but also the thoughtfulness, the insight, the intellect, the heart, everything that he did, both in and out of the ring. I just, Muhammad Ali all the way.
Awesome. And Fletch, who was a rural kid growing up in New Zealand, who was someone you looked up to in the rugby pitch?
Buck Shelford probably is someone that springs to mind. I was a loose forward, but it was more, I was reflecting on, as Kaila was answering then, he inspired me because of who he was as a leader. He was just culturally calm, he was comfortable in all of that, and man, he could lead. And he led through actions, led through words, but he was just that authentic nature of, there was something about him that just truly sort of inspired you to lead.
Yeah, awesome. All right, and this one I'll give to Shane first. Who's a player now that you like watching them perform? Can be on the Crusaders or in the World Rugby setting, up to you.
Yeah, huge bias, Sam Whitelock. And it's more about who he is as a human being, as I've said, like for a guy that just has the ability to understand the game under pressure and has got that ability to impose calm response. And man alive, he, as I say, it's probably knowing him as a person as well as the player. But I've got a lot of man love.
I'm sure you're not alone. All right, Kaila, same question to you. Now that you're more familiar with rugby.
You have all the rugby people to choose from. Sam is absolutely my choice, but do you know, and it's for the same reason. The thing I love about Sam is how thoughtful he is about understanding human behavior and really, and to some really like minor details, but that his level of care and attention that, and we've talked about this. I've talked about this with him. Like he is so curious about human behavior to the point of, like, for example, he says things like, if I go up to a ref, I'm a big guy, and if I'm going up to query a call, I don't want to come across as intimidating because the ref is going to not want to hear what I have to say. So he'll stand side on, he'll spread his legs a little bit to come down a little bit. Like, he's so thoughtful about the way that his behavior affects the people around him and what those dynamics look like. And I just feel like we all have so much to learn from him.
Awesome. All right. And third question, Kaila, who's a high profile coach that you admire the way they lead and the program that they run?
I mean, it's an unfair question, obviously.
Of course,
you know,
I already know the answer.
Razor and Robbie for sure.
Yeah.
Just because I get to work with them so closely and see them, their heart and their care and their passion and skill up close. I do have to give a shout out though. I know you said high profile, but my boxing coach when I was boxing competitively, Dave Marks, he was like a second father to me, and he taught me so much about life and about how to show up and how to, not just how to box, but how to be gracious as an athlete, and how to put my ego aside. And so Coach Marks, this one's for you, man.
Awesome. No, that's fine. And Fletch, you can't say Robbie or Razor for the third question. Who you got?
Fascinatingly, they wouldn't be in my top two, but that's how many others are about, I guess. Like again, I've got utmost respect for every coach because of the fact that they're in it for a reason and a purpose, and they work hard at it. It's you mentioned before I was level 4 World Rugby coach, but also I'm a World Coach educator as well. So I have a lot of interaction with coaches. So I look at the actual coaching heartbeat component. So I'm going to do a big shout out to Dale McLeod, who is currently Moana Pacifica assistant coach involved with the Tongan national team. And the reason I do that is Dale has come through the Canterbury system and was an outstanding coach, but at times we tend to let our biases get in the way, and I don't think he was recognised for how good he was. And what I admire about him is he is just true to himself. He's got on, and he's an outstanding coach because he loves people and he loves making a difference. And I know that's what we all do. And as we build our awareness through things like the CCLP and podcasts like this, and getting to understand ourselves better and others, will all be better. But shout out to Dale.
Awesome. It's a great way to wrap things up. I usually go with the fourth question, someone in the grassroots, but both yours and Kaila's answers were perfect there.
Can I? Sorry, Andy. Can I? So we had someone on our program. The program.
Question 4, grassroots.
Question 4, grassroots.
Let's do it.
So this young lad. Oh, far out. I got to look up his name. This young lad, he's in high school, and he joined our Crusaders Coaching Leadership Program. He coaches the girls lacrosse team at his high school, and he applied for a scholarship with us. And we had a 15-minute. I had the good fortune of having a 15-minute call with him to find out more about his story when he was applying for the scholarship. And I said, how did you end up, he was a senior in high school. How do you end up coaching the girls lacrosse team? And he said that, they had one of the teachers was assigned to it. That teacher didn't really care about lacrosse. They weren't doing that good of a job. And he thought I could do a better job. And he and his mate went and they pitched to the head of department to allow them to coach the team. He starts coaching the team. He brings on a student a year younger than him to be his successor, to make sure he's got succession planning in place. Yeah. So he's my favorite up and coming coach for sure.
All right. Awesome. What a great story. All right. That's a great way to finish. I've really enjoyed this episode. It's the first time I've had 2 guests on, and I couldn't be more happy. My brain's buzzing right now. I think I've got some huge takeaways from both you, and no doubt listeners have too. So Kaila and Fletch, want to really thank you for giving up your time for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.